Have you got a budget? This week's episode, we'll talk about your budget and how to put one together for your real estate business.
Hello, Nestor.
Travis.
How you doing?
I'm great.
All right.
Yeah. You got a budget?
Technically, yes.
Okay, because that's what this episode's about. Yeah. Budgeting for your business. Putting together a budget. We're still in the beginning of the year, so if you happen to be listening to this anytime soon, we're in January of 2022, and we're going to be talking about how to create a budget for real estate or for your real estate business.
Oh, yeah, just the importance of it.
Yes.
How to do it, how to get started. I'd venture to guess that very few people have a budget.
Very true.
And we just don't want to talk about it.
Well, I'm going to venture to guess that the same number of people have a budget, for the most part, that it probably runs in line with having a business plan.
Very true.
So if you've got a business plan and we ask if you have a budget, the answer is usually yes.
Yeah.
Ask it the other way around, the answer is usually no. So
yeah.
I think it's important. I actually think it's more important than a business plan, to be honest with you. I think it's part of your business plan, but if you were really going to only pick one thing, your budget's got to be in line as far as what you're going to do and how you are allocating funds to create success in this industry.
Or even just at the end of the year, look at your P&L and say, what have I done?
Right.
And then why? And you have a good review. And then that way, that's probably the best way to do it, and then be able to develop a budget on that based on, okay, what's made me money, what's brought value to my business, what hasn't,
right,
and deciding how to make that look throughout the year.
You talk with a lot of agents, especially at the end of the year, about their business and things like that. Does this question come up often? Because you mentioned P&Ls. Because I feel like a lot of people really don't analyze that as much as they should be.
No,
you know,
very little.
How much did I make on this particular transaction, or what did I spend versus, I tend to look at it annually. I don't really pay too close attention per property or per situation, but I do tend to look at it annually.
Yeah.
And what are the numbers going in versus the numbers coming out. But, and then my second question, are there a lot of agents using any type of software for tracking any of this?
Yeah.
Something as basic as
It's a question
Quicken.
I don't have an answer to.
Okay. So, which, it being the beginning of the year, now is a fantastic time to investigate that, because there's so many products out there right now that you're able to drop in your receipts, drop in your expenses, helps you with your taxes taxes and keeping up with your expenses there, but it also creates a P&L for you and gives you a better idea of what's coming in versus what's going out. And,
yes.
If you take a little bit of time to set that up, you can actually figure out per transaction, hey, this one made me this one made me that, and this was my return on this investment, my return on that investment.
Yes.
That was all I had.
Got a lot of yeses. I think probably one of the most important things about budgeting for your business is understanding that you're in a business.
Yes.
And it requires capital. And so, you can go out there and you can watch videos, you can talk to your accountant or different people and find out, what are people spending on their business? And I think that, what do they say typically? It's like 15% of your income should go pretty much to marketing.
Correct.
And then, you're going to have another 20% just in expenses, lock boxes, subscriptions, whatever else that you've got going on in your business. So I think it's really important to you start on an annualized basis, get to the end and say, okay, what did I spend on marketing in this last year? And see where it comes in compared to 15% of your gross income. So if you made $100,000 gross, 15% is going to be $15,000.
Right.
So if you're well below that, then you might want to say, I'm not putting the capital in to properly market myself.
Right.
Now, you don't want to do this willy-nilly, right? You don't want to just spend money to spend money. But, that's kind of a long thought over and established figure. And so it's a good target.
Right.
Now, if you go in and it's $15,000 and you find that you spent $30,000, that could be perfectly fine. But why? Am I in a growth year and I really want to hit it and I know what I'm doing and I'm doing it intentionally, okay, that might be good, but you can't sustain that. That's just too much for a business.
Right.
And maybe you're not being efficient. You're going to want to work on paring that back a little bit. So that's what I like about it, is it gives you a target and lets you know what you can be doing in your business.
So, and I agree. I like to use the number 10 to 15, that it should be in that range. I always feel like so again, we're at the beginning of the year, so one of the things that I always feel is important is going back and looking at last year, and where did you spend money that, in our industry, we buy a lot of apps. We buy a lot of those $20 a month subscriptions that come 12 months later, never logged into it, never did anything with it. So I always like to flush those things out at the beginning of the year. Hey, go back 12 months and what's on that credit card that's getting charged every single month, month after month, that really didn't utilize, and getting rid of that. And maybe it gets reallocated somewhere else. But when I look at our budgets, I like to say, okay, if you're going to be spending, we'll use 15%. If you're going to be spending 15% on your marketing, what percentage of that is on branding? What percentage of that is on lead generation? What percentage of that is on advertising your properties that are coming up on the market? And I like to break it down that way so that you have an idea of where everything is coming from. Then, so kind of getting into more of that niche of, hey, there's money that's always going here. There's money that's always going to, so that you pop up somewhere, whether it's in the mailbox, on digitally, whatever the case may be, of just personal branding. And then there is that just got a listing, that money that's going out to market and advertise that property to showcase the home. And then there is the, what is my lead generation? What is going out to actually get somebody to click on lead generation? And that is advanced. I feel like when you're getting started in this business, your money really should be, how do I lead generate?
Yes.
And we say allocation of 10 to 15%, but you can do this without money. It's time or money, or a combination of the two. So, how you break it down, maybe I'm spending 7 to 8% financially, actual hard money, and I've spending another 7 to 8% in time that I've gotten combination to get to that 15%.
Which few to no people think about when they're budgeting.
Right.
When I think about this back, 22, 23 years ago when I got into real estate, I was a sweat equity guy.
Right.
I wasn't afraid. I worked very hard, long hours. And as I look back, I thought, boy, I wish I would have been more into this budgeting. I wish I would have seen what was going on.
Right.
Because I bet you I wasn't spending near what I should have. And the difference I could have made if I would have figured out a few ways to lessen my sweat equity and really build a presence based on check equity, could have made a big difference. So for me, I wish I would have done that a little bit more diligently during my sales days.
Okay. So we talked about the amount, the number. Talked a little bit about how to break it down. Where would you go with, okay, let's, and then I'm a person of reverse engineering everything, and my reverse engineer is, hey, if I want to make $250, I go straight with the numbers. Okay, I need to have a marketing budget of $25,000 to $35,000, and if I apply that correctly in sweat equity and regular out there marketing, it should equate to, as long as I'm converting at a rate that I should be converting at. So that's kind of the method that I take in this whole madness of when somebody comes to me and says, well, I want to take my business from here to here. Okay. What are we doing to lead generate, and how are we doing that, and what things are in place, and how do we improve that, and how do we put more behind that? Your thoughts?
What's the question? I do not reverse engineer generally.
Okay.
That'd probably be a better good idea.
That was my question. My question was, what approach do you take? New agent comes in and they say, I want to start the business. What's going to be your approach? Even a seasoned agent, I want to increase my business.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like budgeting. You got to go in and review what's laying there. With the new agent, you've got nothing. So you've got to start out with just what we know about new agents and how to operate and try to get them on that path. Productive agents, right here, you got to say, where do we stand?
Right.
What are you doing? Is there room for investment? Are you wasting money? Are you efficient or inefficient?
Mm-hmm.
And figure it out from there. And a component of that is, where do you want to go based on where you are? And so kind of adjust it from there. And that can mean spending more money. That can mean cutting money depending on what people are doing.
What about cutting something out? Because, and when I phrase this question a little differently, our industry has changed so much over the years. And where disruption has come from has changed. And I think one of the hardest conversations, not a hard conversation to have, a hard conversation to perhaps get everybody on board and get them to understand, is that yes, what worked in the past still works, but it doesn't work as well. So does it necessarily make sense to put as much there? Or is this now the time to start taking some of and allocating some of those funds in different areas? And I feel like that's a difficult conversation. Typical geographic farming and, door-to-door distribution or flyer production or things like that. That has always been a staple in our business. And I feel like it still is, and it's important to be in the mailbox, but it's not nearly as effective as it used to be. And a lot of solutions for people are, well, let me just keep putting that in there, and I'm keep getting lesser results. But the problem with that is well, I'm still allocating a certain fund to that with lesser results, so that means I'm going to have to spend more somewhere else to make up for it. And does it make sense to continue to allocate that, or hey, am I backing off there and reallocating more funds somewhere else? And I always feel like that's a struggle to let go. Mm-hmm. We have the conversation year after year. Where do most people get their business from?
Sphere of influence.
Sphere of influence.
Supposedly.
Correct. Where do most people spend most of their money? Geographic farming. Yeah. And so we always have that concept of, have we done anything sphere of influence to put more efforts there to try to receive more business? And the answer year after year is usually no. We usually just keep it going and then allocate more and more over here to try to sustain what we have going on.
So the question was, do I see that? Do I agree with that?
Do you see that? And how do you have that conversation with somebody and
Yeah, that's a tough one. There's so many variables to that. Mm-hmm. But generally, we do see it. And, it's the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, hoping to get a different response.
Right.
And I think we do need to look at it. I think all the prospecting methods are still effective.
Absolutely.
I think geographical farming is extremely effective. I think that there's a time and place for expireds and FSBOs. Mm-hmm. This doesn't happen to be the market for that. That's
right.
Someone you struggle with that right now. But you need to think about what you're doing and how you're doing it. So we have agents that are nothing but putting postcards in the mail, and they've been successful with it, but maybe that's waning. We have other agents that have come in and to do geographical farming also, and they're doing it very electronically and on a social basis. And I think that's what you need to see is, where are people? Mm-hmm. So is it a waste of time to do the postcards? I don't think so.
No, not by any means.
But you now need to supplement it, because you're not going to catch everybody that way. When you put on top of it, hey, I'm going to geofence my farm and they're going to get things from me when they go online and it looks like I'm everywhere. Mm-hmm. That's a necessity today in geographical farming. So
somebody's going to ask the question, geofence. There are people out there in our audience that know what that is, but some people are going to ask, what did you mean by geofence? Why don't you explain it to them, So, geofencing is basically the ability to digitally market to a target area. So you put an electronic fence, for lack of a better description, around a particular area, and your digital marketing will only go in that area to the people that are there. Yes. Which is extremely powerful, cost effective. I think too much, our biggest fear of digital marketing is you're spending advertising dollars in a market that is really not your market. You know, the opposite of that is your Facebooks and things like that have made it more difficult with the fair housing, where you have to have a 25-mile radius or 15-mile radius, whatever it is. And for us in our industry, hyperlocal is really where we need to be. And it's counterintuitive there with regard to, well, you know, I'm trying to run an ad here, but it's making me spend my dollars in places that I don't, you know, that aren't effective, aren't necessary for me. But so it's like, how do I get around that? And geofencing is one of the ways that you can do that.
Yeah, and this is actually a really good example, because you're going to have someone who's been farming for a long time, had success in it. You don't want to let that go, but it may not be as effective as it was. And you realize, okay, I got to get some digital going on here, and maybe you were able to collect emails, and so you have a system to use those for marketing. Maybe do some geofencing, so that when people are on their computers in the bar next to it, it has you there, so to remind them of you. And we tend to layer and layer and layer,
right,
without really going, okay, what's going on here expense-wise?
Exactly.
That's what brings back to the budget, is you really need to look at that. And, you know, it all may work out. It may make sense, and it may not. But you don't know until you go back and really look at what you're spending.
Right.
Because like you said today, you know, we're in a cashless world. I mean, it's all credit cards. It's all subscription. It seems so great. You know, it was pretty early on that when Microsoft went, oh no, you don't have to spend whatever it was, $350 on our software. We'll give it to you for $5 a month or whatever it was. And I said, okay, I usually keep my operating system for a long time. Let me extrapolate this. And I went, no wonder they're doing this. They're fleecing us and we don't even know it.
Yep, paying more.
$10 sounds or $5 sounds great. But when you extrapolate that over a long period of time,
we are paying more.
You come to realize, wow, that adds up to a lot of money.
Right. Which, I mean, that part is what it is. But the other thing that I look at when we're talking about budgeting is making sure that we are measuring. That you have to measure so that you know whether or not you're being effective or not. I think, you know, you mentioned that earlier, when we're layering things on top of each other, sometimes it can get difficult to, where did this business actually come from? And some of it is a combination. Some of it is, hey, I saw you here, and all of a sudden I put the pieces together because I see you everywhere, so you were the obvious person to call. Part of it is that. But there's also parts where, hey, does this make sense? And is it giving me a return? Is it complementing something else that's creating the overall return? Or is it falling short? And, you know, does that effort need to be somewhere else?
Yeah. And that's tough. I mean, sometimes you got to ask.
Yep.
Sometimes we get calls and we're not 100% sure where they came from.
Right.
And, yeah, simple question.
We don't ask enough.
Happy to help you. Or maybe get in a little further after you've developed a relationship. Say, hey, no, I never asked you. What inspired you to give me a call?
Right.
Oh, you know, it was Nestor. He lives down the street. Said you'd be able to help us out. Awesome. Nestor happens to be in my farm. Bingo. Exactly.
You know, and it goes back as simple to an open house. It's one of the first questions. How'd you find us today? You know, found you online, found you via signs.
That is a great, you
know, I'm a neighbor, I'm this, but it gives you an indication of where your marketing is working. So if you're a neighbor, did you find it's because of the distribution of the postcards or whatever in the neighborhood? You know, I was just driving by and saw your signs. Believe it or not, that still happens. So just saw the signs and we decided to stop. But the majority of the people saw you online. And then the next question was where online did you find us? So that you know where you're allocating, you know, making sure where you're most visible.
So. And of course you're going to get those, oh, I don't remember, but that shouldn't dampen your enthusiasm to try and find out.
Exactly, that's okay. So they know, they don't, so that's all right. But looking at your budget, 2022, we're in 2022, I'm looking at my budget, and what are some of the things I should be budgeting for in general?
Well, simple ones are you've got subscriptions and things, and you understand what your costs are there and when they're due.
Okay.
But I'm not sure where you're going with it, but
I was just asking.
Yeah, I mean, you want to look at how do you generate your business, right? We call it lines in the water here. So you have 4 lines in the water. Let's break it up that way to begin, right? So I'm doing my geographical farming or my sphere of influence. What am I spending on each of those?
Right. Okay. So the one last thing that I would add to that is your taxes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Got to pay attention to that. They creep up on everybody, especially in our industry. Then they'll creep up on you, and the next thing you know, you're doing well, and then the next thing you know, you owe the government a lot of money. So that is always something that should be part of your budget, making sure that you're allocating for
Yes.
at the time that you're making the money, not one of those, so often we see it in our industry of, that last check of the year will take care of it, or whatever the case may be, and then we run into problems.
Yep, happens a lot that
Yeah.
way. I'm more the conservative guy, but I'm an advocate of multiple accounts. You've got your personal account,
Right.
you've got your business account, and you've got your tax account. And I would even argue for a retirement account.
Exactly.
And every time you get a check, you just know what goes where. So you got 10 to the tax, 10 to the retirement, 35 to the business, 45 to home.
Right.
And you break it out, and that's how you go. Now you can adjust that as you go along, depending on what you need. But doing that and just having it there is going to put you on the road to financial security and success.
Nice.
And we pay quarterly taxes, so you want to make sure that money's sitting there in your little tax account, so you can be
So you're
paying
paying
those. It
them.
doesn't sit there all year.
Right.
And then you find out at the end of the year where you stand.
All right. Well, very good. Anything else on budgeting?
It's tax time. Got my taxes going on right now. This is the best time because you're looking at your receipts, you're looking at your credit card statements, trying to put it all in there to make sure you get the benefit of all those business expenses and things. What a great time to put these in a spreadsheet or something to really see where your dollars go. So if you don't have a budgeting process, right now is the best time.
Absolutely.
Because you'll get double the benefit for your efforts. You'll be preparing what you need for your accountant, but at the same time, you could be preparing a lot of information that's going to help you with your budgeting for the year.
Awesome. I'm not even sure what day of the week it is, but happy whatever the day of week it is that you're watching this. Again, if you're finding value in this, please subscribe, share it, give us a comment. We go back in and we take a look at these, and we'll comment back if you have any questions. And thank you.
Yeah. Have a great day.
All right. Take care, everybody.